Welcome to the Sharing the Faith podcast, where every other week we explore the beauty and power of faith in Jesus Christ, the light of the world. Now here is your host, Dr. Tom Neal.
Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the podcast, Sharing the Faith, my second podcast. This is Dr. Tom Neal here, right here in the flesh. I am the Director of Evangelization and Mission Engagement for the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. And the abbreviation for that, I'm the Chief of Evangelization and Mission Engagement, and that's CEME, which goes see me. So I have an important position because really everything points back to this office, doesn't it, Bishop?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so happy to have you, not just today, but in this role in this office.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be here with Bishop Bill Wack today, who is our bishop here in Pensacola-Tallahassee, and I've had the pleasure of working with now for just over 3 months. And today we're going to talk about evangelization in the church's life here in the diocese, in the United States, the broader mission of the church. And Bishop, I just want to pick your brain today, if you don't mind, on your thoughts.
Long, actually. So
it won't take long. That is
right.
not true, as we will find out here. Bishop, again, a pleasure to be here with you today. And I want to begin by talking about, this is October the 13th today. By the way, this is Casual Friday in the Pastoral Center, which means I have jeans on. And Bishop?
I always wear black.
You always wear black.
I do have fun socks.
Cool
so today
socks.
I'm wearing the spider and spider web socks. You know, it's
the
Halloween, October theme and everything. But
so your socks are famous in this diocese, I understand, especially with children.
It's
kids.
Nice. Yeah, it's a nice
youth.
connection with people. Yeah, like even with little children and college students and adults. I mean, everyone just that's one of the first things they say is, show us your socks. So okay, great. And then it's kind of a fun thing, but it's a way, to engage people even on a little level.
Absolutely. And even when you're in Rome, you show your socks.
I showed them to Pope Francis.
Yeah, Pope Francis, which is quite amazing.
Right.
So it's wonderful to be here, and I'd like to talk. Yesterday was the beautiful Mass over in Tallahassee, on the east side of Tallahassee, for the closing of the diocesan phase of the beatification of the martyrs of La Florida. I know there's a lot longer title to that, but it was just a beautiful, joyful, uplifting Mass. And just so if you wanted to make a few comments on that.
Oh yeah, I'm still floating from it. I think that I was telling people it's probably one of the neatest things that I've done in my life. Before I was a priest, during priesthood, and even now as a bishop, just to be able to be there with the whole community and to put a period on this whole process, which really began centuries ago, actually.
Yes.
In the early 18th century already, people in Spain and the Pope himself knew about these martyrs and were questioning, when are we going to get this together? Who's going to, present their case so that they can be martyrs of the church, the first martyrs of the new world?
Yes.
Well, it's been going on and on and on, and starts and stops, and finally it was started in earnest 8 years ago yesterday, and then it was finished yesterday.
I didn't realize that 8 years ago yesterday. So that's amazing.
That's right. My predecessor, Bishop Parks, really opened the cause.
That's right.
Formally on that day.
That's right.
So, and he was there yesterday when we closed it too. So it's just really, really amazing. And you just think about how momentous that is, how important this is, not just for us, for this local church, but for the United States and the whole world, and not just for this time, but for all time. Yeah. I mean, it just all kind of came to me. Well, it's been over the last few weeks as I've been preparing, but especially yesterday during the Mass and the ceremony. It just, if I thought about it too much, I'd get emotional, which is okay. But
of course.
It really was neat. More I'm thinking about it as I drove back yesterday and last night. I'm so grateful. Grateful to be part of it.
No, it's true. And at the beginning of your homily during the Mass, you talked about the fact that, in early Christianity, one of the things that in a sense is counterintuitive about Christianity's explosive growth is that the message of Christianity is the message of the cross, right? Is the message of carrying your cross, of dying to self, of laying down your life for others, which is the supreme witness. And just how stunning it is to think that message is what captivated the imagination of an empire eventually, and of the whole world.
Yeah, you think that people would run away from that.
Yes.
Not want to join anything that talks about death, persecution, torture, the cross.
Yes.
But the earliest Christians learned quickly to do what Jesus did, not only to apologize for the cross, but to lead with it and say, you know, this is the way God shows love to the world. Yes. And it is hopefully not for us. I mean, hopefully we will not literally die that way, that horrific death by crucifixion. But nonetheless, it reminds us to give over our lives more and more for our brothers and sisters and for Jesus Christ. And that is our joy, and that's salvation.
It is. And so, as you said, the martyrs inspire us. They encourage us, they inspire us, they challenge us in the face of challenge and difficulty and resistance and persecution, evil, you know, to respond with the response that Jesus himself gave to those from the cross. So I think it's powerful. So I want to talk, Bishop, about evangelization, since the martyrs, of course, that's really what they're witnesses to. The bringing of the faith to the new world, and these new converts who were willing to give their whole life faithfully. It's powerful to think of it. So thinking about your own life and your own journey, John Paul II, in the many ways he defined evangelization, in many ways he kind of gave voice to the church's evangelizing mission. He has a beautiful, brief explanation of it, which is evangelization is the awakening of first faith, that first act of faith, that first act of moving from curiosity, you might say, to belief, where you begin to see this is real and this makes a claim on my life in some way. So looking at your own life, what were like key moments of evangelization, of awakening of faith in your life, and who were the agents of that?
Let me just say, I'll go back and tell you it from my childhood, but you just reminded me of something that happened, I think it was late 80s, certainly during John Paul II's reign. Yes. It was so he talked about that, he talked a lot about re-evangelization, and we heard that a lot then.
That's right.
And I didn't really know what to do with it until my younger brother, who's now a priest, he said, you know, Bill, what we need in this country is a reawakening of the faith, a re-evangelization for Catholics, you know, not just for those people who are not yet of the faith, but we need to do that. And I know it sounds obvious today, of course, but it was kind of new back then, and lights just went on. And I said, you know, you're right. We look around and it seems so few really have a great understanding of the faith, you know, or a strong hold on it. And so that really, I mean, of course it came from Vatican II, you know, that drive to re-evangelize and to really preach the gospel and preach Jesus Christ above all things. But then it was played out, you know, by Paul VI and John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict, and now Francis. But anyway, but to answer your question, really in my life, I mean, I grew up in the midst of the faith. And by that, I almost mean that literally. My parents, they didn't talk about it a lot, but it was part of every discussion, the way we treated each other, the way we reacted to bad news or, you know, something that happened at school or in the neighborhood or something like that. It was all about faith, about forgiveness and love. And then this is what I really appreciate about my parents, the house where I grew up in, is they surrounded us with images of the saints, of Mary, crucifixes, you know, and everything like that. And so it wasn't really just, you know, hammered into us. They didn't talk about it a lot, but it was just there, the beauty of our faith, good artwork and everything. And that, I didn't know it at the time, but it really fed me. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to be like Mary. I wanted to be like the saints. I'm always drawn to the crucifix. Just kind of staring at it, you know, and praying with it and everything. And where does that come from? Well, it was right over my bed, you know, all in our rooms there were crucifixes and everything. And it wasn't something horrifying or scary. It's mysterious, and I was drawn into it, and I still am, and that's probably why I became a Holy Cross priest and religious, and still have that, you know, as part of my life, you know, that the motto, "Hail the Cross, our only hope." But also just during other times, you know, when I went into the seminary, then it was, before that, it was good priests and brothers and sisters, especially of Holy Cross, who evangelized and taught me by word and example. And then in the seminary, that was a really exciting time because I could be around a lot of people around my age, you know, we're walking this journey together. We're asking all kinds of questions, making connections in philosophy and theology, and serving together. And then it was in service after that, you know, going to various places like a soup kitchen or a jail, a prison, hospitals,
campus ministry at Notre Dame.
Campus ministry, exactly.
Yes.
So really, I mean, there's just been different in my life, you know, I can't point to one moment when someone, brought me the gospel, for once and for all, but just over time, God has been putting people in my path. I know that who have been kind of awakening that, as you say, that curiosity, that first spark of the faith.
Yes, and your discussion of the images in your home, like your home spoke faith, the way that you lived your life in the house and the sacred artwork in the home makes me think of the importance of imagination, or a Catholic imagination, cultivating a rich imagination in the faithful, where they can see the world through the eyes of faith, not just by words or concepts or ideas, but just a whole kind of imaginative world. And I also think, Bishop, when I think of, you discussed this in your relationship at seminary with your brother seminarians or others you've served in your ministry. One of the ways that I feel like I've been evangelized over these years, again and again, in other words, my faith has been awakened in a deeper way, is through my children. My children, watching them, as they grow in curiosity and wonder and their extraordinary trust in Patty and my wife, Patty and myself, as we present the faith to them and their openness to it. And when I present the faith to my children and they absolutely trust every word I say, it calls on something in me to kind of go back and question, do I have that same kind of absolute open, trusting faith? And so just thinking about your ministry, when you share the faith with people around you and you see their faith awakening as a result of your own life and your witness and your teaching, do you feel that draws out of you a deeper kind of conversion?
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course I don't have children, but yeah, when someone asks me, what does the church teach on blank, and then a lot of times, if I don't know exactly the right answer, or not the right answer, but the full answer, I'll say, here's the quick answer. Let me do a little research. But a lot of times it's just, they just want to know, what do you think about this? Or what does the church teach? And it makes me really, obviously, not question it. So I'll say, this is what the church teaches. And they say, okay, great, thank you. That's what I was looking for. And then they leave me and I'm thinking, gosh, wow, that's a lot of pressure on me. You know what I mean? A lot of pressure. But it really helps me to stay current, and to research things like that and to be able to know what that is. And also there's that curiosity. Why are they asking that? And what does that lead? And what's the bigger picture? What does that lead to? And also talk about, getting it out of me or pulling it out of me, whatever, when I give talks and presentations and even homilies, but especially talks and presentations, a group will say, could you come and speak to us about hope or about the cross or about reconciliation? Well, yes, I'd love to do that. And that gives me an opportunity for days to really just pray about it and research that. And a lot of times, when I present things, I don't say it to them, but I say, this is mostly for me. I loved this research or this, prayer, this time of reflection, because I learned a lot, and here it is, and I give it back to them.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. I mean, teaching and preaching, in your case, but teaching for me is probably the thing that brings alive my own wonder the most. Yeah. That freshness of my own faith, being able to share it with someone else. When you think kind of more broadly about the United States, and especially since the Second Vatican Council, and as you said, Pope Paul VI, who emphasized evangelization in his encyclical on evangelization, John Paul II, and so on. And you look at the movements that have arisen, especially among the laity, evangelizing movements out there. Which ones do you, when you see them, kind of give you the most hope for that kind of fresh new springtime John Paul II talked about in evangelization?
Yeah, and it is still, even though this was emphasized at Vatican II, and Pope St. Paul VI said, the church exists to evangelize. I love that. We've still been very slow to get to that point, it seems, where our emphasis is really on evangelization. For a long time, we said, well, that's kind of a Protestant term, we go to Mass and we do other things in service, but evangelization, we just didn't know what to do with it. But finally, it seems in my adulthood, or that's when I first encountered Catholics who said, what, we need to go out, we need to somehow find a way to evangelize, not only to those who aren't Catholic, but to those who are, and so you asked that question. I think things like NET, National Evangelization Team, that's what it stands for. Yeah, just things like that, movements like that, where you have young people who come for a year or two they learn about the faith. Then they go out to give retreats and talks and skits and all that to parishes and everything. I love that. So a lot of that. And then religious communities, like the Sisters for Life or the Dominican Sisters from Nashville or Ann Arbor, there's so many others, kind of recent new congregations that focus on evangelization and re-evangelization. I met a group yesterday, the sisters who were there at the Mass in Tallahassee. I forgot the title of their congregation, sorry sisters, but it included, or their charism is defense of the Eucharist and evangelization in the world and things like that.
Wow!
So
didn't know that.
What a neat thing.
Yeah,
that never existed before, and it was great. And when I was really little, we had teaching sisters and brothers and things like that. But now it's neat to have these new congregations of young people who are on fire with the faith.
Yes.
And not just congregations, but also lay movements as well.
Yes.
And it's also through service, I believe, through volunteering, through missionary activity, literally by sending people out into the world. It was Peace Corps and Jesuit Volunteer Corps and Holy Cross Associates. Those were like the three big ones when I was really little. But now there's a lot more opportunities for people to do that.
There are, and there's so much now available. I mean, online resources for evangelization, even practical training. I know in this diocese we have St. Paul Street. Is it St. Paul Street Evangelization? Which goes on quietly but consistently. It's and all lay led. It's powerful. And then Word on Fire, of course, Bishop Barron. It's kind of enormous effort to bring the gospel out. But there are so many. I mean, obviously, we look at the positive things, the work of grace and the signs of grace, which are everywhere. But there's lots of obstacles. There's lots of challenges out there in our culture that we face as a church in bringing the gospel to our culture. I mean, there's on many fronts, and we don't want to be overwhelmed by them, but we want to be aware of them. So as you look at your own ministry as a bishop, beforehand as a priest, parish priest, and with the Holy Cross Fathers, what obstacles do you feel in our culture we need to be most aware of to evangelization and then respond to, in kind of proactive ways?
I feel like everyone says this, but I'm still going to say it. I think one, if not the number one obstacle, a major one, is we're competing against a culture which is, seems to be devolving into, hopelessness and despair and anger and conflict. And it really is, you'd think we have the answer. The answer is Jesus Christ, and hope and everything. But it is really formidable right now, and it's constant and relentless. Even just today, I came in just on fire about what happened yesterday, and I met a couple of people, and they were saying, "Well, yeah, but there's this." And then I saw somebody texted me and is really, really upset, as we all are, about what's happening in Israel.
Oh, sure.
And almost that you could see the despair, read the despair, and in her text it just said, "What's the point? What are we making any difference?" And so, that is really a formidable obstacle, I believe. We have the answer. We know, hey, this ends in glory, as we keep saying, as we know. But also, it's not just pie in the sky when we die type of stuff. It's Jesus Christ is here now. Yes, there is a lot to worry about. I'm not saying that we should just ignore all of that because it is real. But how can we reach people and show them that things have changed. Jesus has renewed the world. He has overcome evil. Not completely, it's still thrashing about, but to be on the winning side, and that changes everything. And it almost seems like people are, like I said, losing hope, or they don't believe it, or they don't know that we are victorious.
Yes.
It's going all the way back to the time of, the letters of St. Paul, when he had to say, what could separate us from the love of God? And then he names things you'd think would separate us: war and violence and famine and death. No, nothing, not even demons or angels can do that. I think we need to be bold in doing that, and spreading the good news again like that in a world that is torn by strife and hopelessness and anxiety right now.
And I think, so much of your approach, Bishop, what I love about the way that you approach your ministry and just relationships and preaching is your focus on hope, your focus on what's good and what. So Jesus' resurrection is present now, which doesn't ignore, as you said yesterday, we don't just focus on the resurrection and ignore the cross, but we only look at the cross, which is the symbol in some ways of the division and evil and hatred and violence of the world. But we only look at it in light of the resurrection, in light of the triumph that he's worked in that, and that he's continually working in that. And I appreciate so much you're constantly calling us back to that, because it's so easy to get lost in the shadows, to get lost in the darkness, and there's just so much out there that can pull us down. And I think of that very simple, remember the Christophers, that movement, the Christophers, they always have pamphlets in the back of the church. I remember when I was a kid, and they have that beautiful, simple phrase, which is, instead of cursing the darkness, light a candle, right? So it's the alternative. It's easy to curse the darkness. It's in a sense, it takes courage and hope to light candles. And I think that's what you try to call us to. And
we do that through many ways. Pope John Paul II did that, especially just in the way he would exhort us. Certainly, here is a man who knew violence and death and the difficulty, tragedy growing up, in his family and then in the world and everything, and through communism. But what is he known for? What phrase? 3 words: "Be not afraid." I mean, that's a major thing. And he said it. If he said it once, he said it probably 1,000,000 times.
Yes.
Especially to young people, and have courage and be proud of the gospel and all of that. That goes a long way. Granted, we have all these voices telling us, there's no use, it's hopeless, the world's going to pot and all that. But if we do that, and we not just by saying things like that, but we show the world we have hope, I think that will go a long way.
Yes, and part of the sign of hope is joy. Joy, which, with the joy of the gospel, as Pope Francis entitled his post-synodal exhortation that he put out. Just beautiful, that joy, which again, I know that in your life, joy has a kind of privileged role, right? It really is a mark of yours in so many ways, which I find very powerful.
It can be annoying probably for others.
Well, yes. Well,
no, it's just, I tell people, I wasn't born with a great intellect or administrative skills, but I've got joy, and that's what I want to exploit, want to use, want to show forth. That's who I am. Teilhard de Chardin famously said, "Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God." That's right.
It truly is. I would question your question about your intellect, Bishop. You sell your Bishop.
Anyway.
Yes. Anyway, well, I'd like to talk about your experience in Phoenix, to go back to Phoenix, Arizona, which was a previous era of your ministry, which was with Andre House, and I'll let you talk a little bit about that. But I want to introduce it by talking about Jesus in Luke chapter 4, as he gives his inaugural sermon, kind of his launching his public ministry after his baptism in the Jordan. He quotes from Isaiah with the first line, which is that he has come, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he's anointed me to bring good news to the poor. To bring good news to the poor. And then, of course, the rest of the gospel, he carries that out. That really is the focus of his ministry, is on the poor, in the many forms that takes. And this is very much the heart of the Catholic vision. So just thinking about how Jesus' own focus on the poor as kind of the epicenter of his proclamation of the good news that he's come to bring, how does that shape the church's mission, concretely speaking, in your own vision?
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, Andre House is named after Saint Andre Bessette, a Holy Cross brother from Montreal. Just a very simple person, like Therese of Lisieux, who just had this childlike trust and joy and faith and everything. And so this is named after him. He also served anyone who came to the door, and so Andre House is a house of hospitality. In the spirit of the Catholic Worker Movement, founded by Dorothy Day. Basically, it's a huge place in Phoenix, where there's a large population of people who are experiencing homelessness, and so we give people the basic necessities of life. I mean, water, ice, blankets, shower, bathrooms, laundry, lockers, to put their stuff in, and then food. We serve a big meal every night for about 600 or 700 people, and that was really very important for me and very formative in my life. I spent 7 years there as a director, one summer there as a seminarian, and then 7 years as a director. And I think some of the things that I learned as I look back is it was important to do this as a team. So it was me as the director, another brother was there, and then usually about 7 or 8 young people right out of college who spent a year or two doing that. And every day we would celebrate Mass together with some of our guests as well out in the parking lot. Made for some interesting Masses, as you can imagine. But and then we would have a little reflection at noon. What's going on? What have you experienced already today or yesterday? And where is God in all of this? And then we would do an extended reflection time on Fridays with our days off when the building was closed, and that was really, really important for all of us, because we had to remind ourselves we're not an NGO, we're not just do-gooders here, just handing out stuff to people, but this is the gospel. This is like our church right here, And again, it's not just us, people with means, leaning down to help those poor people, but we're in this together. We would learn from our guests as well, and do as much as we can with them, eat with them, and pray with them, and have conversations with them. And I think that for me reminded me more than anything of Jesus, his inauguration, when he said, basically, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he's God has set me to preach glad tidings to the poor. And I thought, it's happening just like this. Yes. And it doesn't mean he excludes those of us who are not poor, those of us who have means, or the rich at all. But perhaps they're the most open to it. They're the ones who are just receiving. They need to receive, and so they've opened their heart, their bodies to whatever you can give them, and it finds a home in them, and that's what God wants for all of us.
Yes, and the people who are served, who come in there, the poor, the homeless, and so forth, are obviously affected by the witness of those who serve, like yourself as director. But people who come to volunteer there, and the people who are kind of affected by the witness of the church concretely expressed in Andre House. When I worked up in D.C. for a while at Mother Teresa's Gift of Peace up there in northeast side of D.C., which was a hospice and homeless shelter. And I know the volunteers who came through, like myself, volunteers were really transformed by the experience of being there. It really went through deep conversion experiences. Not just being with people, in this case, who had HIV/AIDS or homeless or just very difficult, painful, tragic situations, but being in an environment where the sisters, the missionaries of charity, and then other volunteers are really clearly evidencing that this is an act of faith for them, that they see Christ in these people, and they want to be Christ in these people. And so volunteers who would come through would have conversion experiences themselves just by being part of the work. And so thinking of how those works in this diocese, for example, Catholic Charities or Joseph House or Trinity House, or so many different works in this diocese, can be places where people come to volunteer and find themselves changed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One more thing about, I could talk out forever about Andre House, but you're right. So many times, every day, every afternoon, we would need 30 volunteers from various schools, high schools, or corporations, or the city, or something like that, to come down. And so we had a big sign-up list. And afterwards, I would process with them, what'd you think? How'd you like it? And they would someone in the group would always say every day, I got more out of this than I put in. It really affected them, the volunteers.
Sure.
And our guests, we never called them the homeless, because no one's homeless. You're a person, who's experiencing homelessness. We just called them the guests. But I would have guests, also just say, there was one person, irascible, never came in, selling drugs, selling crack on the corner, very angry, threatening people, even our volunteers. He was very frightening person a lot, and I would engage him, try to, and sometimes it was okay, sometimes it did not go well. But one day when we were alone, he confided in me. He said, I'm sorry about everything. He said, I don't know what I'm doing or who I am, but I got to tell you this, I see Jesus in you, which was just an amazing moment. The next day he was yelling at us again and everything, but
there was a moment.
That's the point. But here in the diocese as well, there are opportunities, and we have to kind of challenge ourselves, and Pope Francis is really good about this, challenging bishops and priests and all of us to get out of our comfortable rectories and houses and go out. It used to be we were so blessed for a long time. We took it for granted that if we just open the doors of a new church, we'll build a church and open the doors, here they come. Well, they're going out now. People are not coming in. They're going out.
That's right.
To other churches or no church at all. And that shouldn't be our only motivation, but it's a big one. So we need to go out and not just get people to come in, but go out and meet people where they are, in the hospitals, in the prisons, on the streets. So that's why I especially love places like you mentioned, Trinity House, Joseph House, Magella House soon for pregnant women that will be open soon. Just opportunities for us to serve other people and not just wait for them to come to us, to our churches or our property.
Yes. If you don't mind, I think we have a little bit of time left here. When we were talking about Andre House in Phoenix, you were telling me about some of your own experiences out on the streets around the area. There was a tough area that place was in, and your own encounters with some of the people on the streets, difficult situations, etc., and the respect they had for you as the chaplain, right? This kind of respect that comes with your office, what you represent, right? You represent something greater than yourself, and it kind of brings a respect with that. And I think it's not just for clerics or religious who can bring that. Lay people, right, as they witness to the faith authentically, can have that same authority. But are there any stories you might share from that kind of those encounters you had?
Yeah, that's it. It's authentic. You're right. It's not just clerics, priests, or whatever. But if you genuinely love and care for others, they will know that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, there's a lot of stories, but just one was really neat. We were there every day, but especially on the holidays, and especially Thanksgiving. I mean, it was overwhelming, the number of churches or groups that would come out to our neighborhood and open the back of their truck, put out tables, and maybe preach the gospel with a megaphone or not, and then just pack up and then leave. And I mean, on those days, it was obscene how much food there was, and we didn't need any volunteers. We were full on that day for a year. Don't come on Thanksgiving, because we have so many people, which is great. But afterwards, the next day we were serving again on the Friday Friday we were closed. Saturday after Thanksgiving we're serving again, and one of the guests, or a couple of them, were just talking at a table, and they said, "You see, this is how we know that you're for real. You're not just here on Thanksgiving and Christmas or just one day a week. You're here every day, and you eat the same food, and you're with us all day, and you sleep right over there, which is really neat. It's that authenticity. It's not just, you're not just a do-gooder, but this is your life, and I think that's what we have to do more and more. Other stories, things that I learned from guests, they actually help to prop me up sometimes, and they said one woman who lived in a box, out there outside the building, and unfortunately died there right after I left. We were friends. We would talk a lot. She saw I was having a bad day, and she said, "Look, man, chaplain, lift up your head. You teach us this hope. You're all about hope and the cross. Don't you talk about the cross all the time?" She said, "All this will end in glory, chaplain." She said, "Lift up your head. Don't you ever forget that." And I've never forgotten that, and I use that. I know you do. I didn't know that. Tell her story in a lot of talks and presentations and homilies, and right now. Wow. So I remember Gloria a lot. But so many other there are a lot of funny and fun encounters too. Not really funny ones, but people would come running up to try to sell me drugs. Not recognizing the car. We would drive donated vehicles, and sometimes I'd be in another car, and they wouldn't have seen that. And they drive up, "Hey, are you looking for?" "Oh, sorry, chaplain." They would run away. Just there were many opportunities like that. Or women of the street would dig, "Hey, baby." "Oh, hi, Father Bill." And I would, I knew them well, and I knew they were going to be there for dinner. So I'd say, "Well, do you want to ride or anything?" Like, "Oh, no. Why'd you stop me?" "Oh, no, please drive." But just moments like that I think help them to realize that I'm human. I understand what's going on, but I'm here not to condemn or judge, but to live the gospel with you and help you to help. And have you help me to help live the gospel.
Yes, anyway, I do. That's beautiful. And here's the last point I'd like to make then, just off of those stories there, which is Father Dustin Fedden, who I'm friends with here, who's the founder of Joseph House over in Tallahassee. We were talking about evangelization, and he was using the word proximity, the importance of proximity or nearness to people in ministry, or just in life and relationships, that so many times when we find ourselves hostile to other people or divided ideologically because they belong to this camp of thinking here, this political camp or whatever, we don't find ourselves being close to them, having conversations of face to face, or we talk things out. Or in ministry, we can think about people on the streets in a certain way, but we've never spoken to anyone, right? Mother Teresa used to say, a lot of people, it's fashionable to speak about the poor, but they never speak to them, right? There's no encounter on the importance of that. So just thinking about people in their daily lives, when they evangelize, when they bring the good news of Jesus Christ, when they bring Christ to others or discover him in others. So much of it is, who are the people you're close to already, or who are the people in your life that you're far from, that Christ is calling you to become close to so that he can work in that proximity. So those stories really made me think of that.
I like that proximity, It's, I mean, what's the core of the gospel message? When Jesus sent out the 72 or the 12, he said that this is your message. The kingdom of God has come to you, or has come near to you,
Yes.
That was the message. And what is the kingdom? Well, it's where Jesus is. Basically, God is with you. And, the title for Jesus, Emmanuel, God is with us. I think that's spot on. We've got to tell people that, and remind the people and each other that God is with us.
Yes.
Because people feel abandoned. They feel far away from God, or that God has removed himself from them because of what they've done.
Yes. Cannot
Be further from the truth. God will never leave us. And that itself is a comfort and helps us to be converted and reconciled with God. So I think that should be our message as well. You're right. We distance ourselves. When we disagree, we start using names. Well, it's those people, that group, those evil people,
That's right.
We don't just say those misguided or they're a little wrong. No, they're evil. They don't belong in the world, They shouldn't be breathing the same air as me. It's horrible. And then, of course, the lie of social media is that it's supposed to bring us all closer together, but it's really seeming to put a great distance between us. And so then the answer is, yes, proximity. It's bringing the kingdom of God close and reminding us that Jesus is with us. And we do that by having conversations, by listening to one another. And that's something we don't do. We're shouting, we're yelling, we're texting.
Right. Sure.
And I know there's anxiety in the world because of the synod in Rome. What are they going to decide? Are they going to change everything? I don't believe that things are going to change, or that's the intention. I really believe that Pope Francis said we've got to come together to listen. There's no harm in listening where people are. And people say, yeah, but that might lead to all these changes. Well, let's let the Holy Spirit decide that. But it starts with listening to one another and honoring each other in that way. I think that is important. I like the proximity.
Yeah, no, that's and ending with the note of listening. It begins with that. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.
Nice.
And that's not just in prayer, but it's through each other. I think that's key. And I'll say, Bishop, that I think some of the most healing experiences of my life at difficult times have been when people have listened to me with compassion and love, or the biggest differences I've had with other people have changed only because we've taken time to listen to each other. So that's a remarkable way to kind of end evangelization. We think of evangelization usually as speaking, as kind of proclaiming, but it really is an act of listening, to the Lord and then to each other, allowing Christ to appear in that. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a pleasure.
Oh, it's great. I could go on and on. I know you could as well. This is something that we're both very passionate about.
Absolutely.
And I so appreciate your position, your role, your presence in our diocese.
And thank you for trusting me and bringing me into this diocese, which is really, in a sense, my wife and my spiritual home. So it's so good to be back here and to join you in your work.
Welcome home, man.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Sharing the Faith. Join us again in 2 weeks, and God bless you.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Sharing the Faith podcast. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit ptdiocese.org/sharingthefaith. If you listen to the audio version through an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe, or leave a comment on the episode. Thank you for listening.